always, today we have breaking news. We got informed that the American U-2 spy plane photographed 2 days ago the Soviet Union middle-range missile sites that are under construction in Cuba. Here are some images.
Good afternoon. Today was a difficult day for President John F. Kennedy. He is very concerned about the information he has received on the missiles in Cuba. He has called for a meeting inviting 14 men, including military leaders, representatives of the CIA, cabinet ministers, and personal friends, all who will advise him on different strategies for dealing with this crisis.
Today, the President of the United States has an important message from the White House. Let's listen to President John F. Kennedy.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government has promised to maintain the closest surveillance of military buildup of the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence of offensive missile sites is now in preparation of that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be no other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere only lost Thursday. As evidence of this rapid defense buildup that is already in my hand, Soviet Prime Minister Beniko told me in my office that will be instructed to be clear once again, as he said that he's already done. The Soviet Assistant Secretary Bern, and I quote, "pursue surely the purpose of continuing to the defense capability of Cuba," unquote. That I quote him, training by Soviets, specialists of Cuban nationals, and handling defensive Romanians was by no means offensive. And though otherwise, Mr. Beniko, the Soviet government, would never become involved in wandering so instance, unquote, that statement was also false. Acting in our own of our defense, security, and the entire Western Hemisphere, and under the authority of transmitted mean of the Constitution, as enclosed of the resolution Congress, I've directed the following initials. Steps should be taken immediately. The whole defensive buildup, a strict corrective of all offensive military equipment undership to kill Cuba will be indicated. All ships of any kind bound to Cuba from whether nation or port will be found to contain cargoes or offensive weapons to turn back. Shall be the policy of this nation to we God to any nuclear missile launched from Cuba and any nation in the Western Hemisphere. As an attack by the Soviet Union on the U.S. requiring a fort territory response from the Soviet Union, I call upon Chairman Khrushchev to halt and eliminate this claim. This ruthless, reckless, and provocative threats to world peace and a stable relation between two nations. I call upon him further to abandon of discourse of world domination and join in a historic epic. To end the perilous armed rage and transform the history of man. Our goal is not the victory of might, but the indication of right. Not peace of the extensive freedom, but both peace and freedom of here in this hemisphere, and hope around the world, God willing that God will be achieved.
For receiving these letters, a U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba. The military leaders remain the president of his promise. They want him to give orders from the bombing of Cuba. He refused. He sent a letter to Nikita Khrushchev accepting the terms of the first letter. Nikita proposed that the Soviet Union will be willing to remove the missiles in Cuba, in exchange for a promise that the U.S. would not invade Cuba and will remove its missiles from Cuba.
Today's news, President Kennedy has received 2 letters from Nikita. In the first letter, the President of the Soviet Union, Nikita, accused the President of the United States of creating a crisis to help out the diplomatic party. He sent a proposal that the President will read over.
Today, President Kennedy imposed a naval blockade of Cuba. He also informed the Air Force to prepare an attack on Cuba. 125,000 Army men wait for orders to attack. Kennedy promised military advisors that if one of the U-2 spy planes were fired upon, he will give orders for an attack.
After 13 long days of tension between the Soviet Union and the United States, the crisis has finally ended with an agreement to remove all missiles from Cuba and Turkey. Good morning. Today we have the great opportunity to interview Fidel Castro. We will be asking him questions regarding the Soviet Union missiles. We will talk about why he was willing to allow the Soviet missiles to be placed in Cuba.
Hello, Mr. Castro. Welcome to NBX Channel 4 News. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Thank you for having me here. It's my honor to be here.
How were you willing to allow the Soviet missiles to be placed in Cuba?
I feel like it's necessary to let the United States know that an invasion of Cuba would indicate a war with the Soviet Union. We are willing to take the risk.